Welcome back. In news from the courts, a number of illegal immigrants arraigned today for illegal entry into the country. 10 males from Cuba and the Dominican Republic were among them. Through an interpreter, they pleaded guilty to illegal entry coming in at Kisa last week. Now, the men apologized, saying they were searching for a better way of life and they were trying to get to the United States. They were fined $300 or they will have to spend 6 months in jail. Now, the magistrate then told them that she was sorry that their fine was only $300 because it cost much more for them to be transported home. Well, 2 men from Guatemala also charged before the courts today. One of them pleaded not guilty to having a fake passport. He told the magistrate that he received the document from authorities in his country. The other man spoke little English and has to return to court with an interpreter. They have been remanded to prison. And Jamaicans Sally Ann Brown and Jackie Anderson were also in court today because they stayed beyond the time given. The two pleaded guilty, and Brown's lawyer explained that she was vacationing in Eleuthera and thought that she would be able to stay for 6 months and not 2 weeks. As for Anderson, she said she was a witness in a case in Jamaica and she was afraid to return. She claims she didn't report the matter to the police, fearing that she would be harmed. They were fined $2,000 and they will be deported. Well, the Bahamas is again listed as one of the major drug transit or producer countries on America's 2012 list. Now, we're told that countries are placed on the list because of geographic, commercial, and economic factors that allow drugs to transit or be produced, even if governments carried out stringent law enforcement measures. Well, Foreign Affairs Minister, the Honorable Fred Mitchell, addressed this issue today, saying despite the report, government maintains a healthy diplomatic relationship with the United States.
The report indicates cooperation on trying to stop this as an issue. It reports that we do all that is necessary to try and stop it within our resources. And there's international cooperation on the front, so there's nothing adverse about it. So the declaration in and of itself should not be a concern. It means nothing more than what it says. And I mean, the facts are what the facts are. But the country's reputation, I think, is in no way besmirched, nor should people think adversely or negatively about the Bahamas because we happened, as a matter of our geography, to be where we are.
As the country prepares for a referendum on gambling and another on constitutional changes, the people could also decide whether to allow oil drilling in the country. Well, Bahamas Petroleum Company executive Mr. Paul Gustav welcomes this step.
Minister Christie confirmed that he intended to have the regulations in place that would govern the drilling activity before then. We welcome those regulations in place. We think they're essential for us to move forward. As far as a referendum goes, people I have talked to in the Bahamas, once they understand the facts of what we're doing and what the geologic and environmental situation is, are encouraged by it and anxious to move forward. We've had a number of talks at various Rotary clubs, business councils, Chamber of Commerce, Trade Union Commission, and not generally, all of those, after we've talked to them, have come out in the press and said they support what we're doing as long as the environmental regulations are in place.
Well, Gustav says even though there are concerns about accidents, that's unlikely.
The likelihood of a spill is extremely small because the geology is totally different than the Gulf of Mexico. In the Gulf of Mexico, the sands and shales are deposited very rapidly, pressures build up in the sands, and the fluids in the section as you drill through it is fighting to get into the wellbore and into the surface. Based on the 5 wells that were drilled previously in the Bahamas and one very close to where we want to drill, the Doubloon-Saxon well drilled in 1985, we understand that the section is carbonate rocks, very rigid, and the pressures are normally pressured. So the fluids are fighting to get out of the wellbore into the reservoir. It's not like the Gulf of Mexico. Furthermore, in order to be prepared, we're not planning on having an accident, but we've done considerable, very sophisticated oil spill modeling, and that modeling shows that Mother Nature is taking care of the Bahamas. The ocean currents and the wind currents in that part of the Old Bahamas Channel would take any accident toward Cuba.
Well, the Crisis Center is calling for peace, and it's teaming up with its regional partners in echoing that call. During a conference at the Sheraton Resort last evening, the country's leader commended the group for its efforts in assisting abuse victims. Cyan Thompson tells us that government is also doing its part by putting laws on the books.
Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Perry Christie, as he opened the peace conference, reaffirmed the government's commitment to protect victims of abuse of all kinds. The main thrust, Christie said, has been through legislation.
We acknowledge that no form of violence against persons is acceptable, and it is incumbent on our society to ensure that measures are put in place for the benefit of victims as well as to deal effectively with perpetrators. The Domestic Violence Protection Orders Act was enacted in 2007 and brought into force in 2008, which means, therefore, that both political organizations had their feet, their support, their hands on this piece of legislation.
While saluting the work of Dr. Sandra Dean Patterson, director of the Bahamas Crisis Center, Prime Minister Christie told her that public resources are available to drive their mandate and that they must also take advantage of resources within the community.
Recognize that in communities there are police officers who will be joined by social service workers, who will be joined by health workers who are in the community, who are meeting with the community, who are getting to know the community, and who can, in fact, give you results that will make your work easier. That is a reality, and take advantage of it.
The Prime Minister said that our homes should be a safe haven, but for many victims of abuse, homes become a battleground.
Our homes, ladies and gentlemen, must become places of love and security. If we are to have peace in our homes, it follows naturally that we will have peace in our communities. It is no secret that domestic violence is as pervasive in our country as it is in many other countries, and that the majority of victims are females.
The conference ends on Friday. Delegates are expected to create a recommendation list to present to their respective governments on legislation and policies to help abuse victims. Cyan Thompson, ZNS News Network.
The problems associated with child abuse continue to plague us. Yesterday, government, along with its corporate partners, launched the latest child abuse initiative. Carla Palmer tells us all about it.
4 by 8 foot panels showcasing images of happy, sad, hungry, and confused children are the latest effort to bring about awareness, education, and reinforcement about child abuse. It's a recurring problem faced by countless children countrywide. Luckily, there is that group of people constantly fighting the elements to protect our nation's youth from this constant nightmare. People like Pastor Gail Maycock, who serves as chairman of the National Child Protection Council, and Andrew Aiken of Aiken Imaging Sign Shop.
We want everyone to understand in the Bahamas that every single child matters, whether they are handicapped, deformed in some other shape or form, whether they're black, white, whatever socioeconomic level they happen to be in, rich, poor, whatever. They are all very important.
Everyone can do something. Yeah. Neglect, and that's not my problem, is no excuse. Everyone can give. Everyone can join a child organization and contribute or volunteer a Sunday or a Saturday or some private time.
The panels, 6 in total in this initial stage, are to be mounted not only here in New Providence, but the Family Islands as well. Officials are looking for them to prick the consciousness of perpetrators while reminding the public that every child matters. According to the Minister of Social Services and Community Development, Melanie Griffin, last year, 636 cases of child abuse were filed. This year, from January to August, 235 cases were reported. Neglect accounted for the highest number of cases, followed by physical abuse and then sexual abuse.
Those are reported cases, but I believe that from what historically, that the figures may even be more than that. And in fact, these are only reported cases. And the formula used by social scientists really is that multiply it by 3 to really whatever the figure is, to multiply it by 3. and that may give you a truer picture of cases that are reported. But we must never ever, let up the fight. We have to always know that there are some vulnerable children out there.
The public is being reminded that the Child Protection Act of 2007 mandates that all forms of child abuse be reported. The first set of child abuse panels are expected to be mounted by this Friday. Carla Palmer, ZNS News.
BTC technicians tonight are trying to fix yet another cable that was reportedly cut during the roadworks. Officials say that this is at least the 50th time that its equipment has been damaged during those works. Apparently, heavy equipment operated by Jose Cartellone employees reportedly cut through a major line on Wolf Road yesterday, leaving 2,400 customers without landline and internet services. Affected areas include Highbury Park, Soldier Road, Church Hill Subdivision, Independence Drive, East-West Highway, Industrial Park, Nassau Village, Redland Acres, and Windsor Place. Service should be restored by Saturday. Now, we understand that between March and June, there were 18 accidents that knocked out service. The College of the Bahamas' transitional team visiting one of the fastest growing family island communities as the facility expands and moves to university status. While in Exuma, members talked to residents to find out more of their needs. This was the first stop, and members will head to other islands. The group also met with Education Minister, the Honorable Jerome Fitzgerald, as well as College Council Chairman Alfred Sayers.